verse 1 of Yahushua chapter 7 says, "And after this, Yahushua was walking in Galilee, for he did not wish to walk in Yehudah, because the Yehudim were seeking to kill him." So, because of what we've read in the previous chapters, the Yehudim were already ready to kill him. They were ready to do everything necessary to kill Mashiach because of their envy and because, of course, by him being the light, he was showing everything that they were doing wrong. So, in the literal sense, this is what was happening. But in the spiritual, remember that when it says, and after this, then pretty much refreshes the interpretation. Like we should understand that now there's something new that we should take from the story, but now in a allegorical sense. In this case, remember, as I always mentioned, that the book of John was written according to the interpretation called Sod, which is the last of the four types of interpretation, known as Pardes, Sod being the last, which is secret, the secret interpretation or the mystery, as when Paul would say, "Here I tell you a mystery," as when he reveals the harvest during the last trumpet. Um, he says that is a mystery. So that was something that was written by the Almighty through the Ruach in the Sod type of interpretation. So the book of John and the letters of John and the book of Revelation is written in that same level of interpretation. Um, Still has the other three, but it goes all the way to the fourth. So meaning that it goes very deep into the prophetical. So in this case, after this, pretty much saying now another story or another prophecy regarding the coming of the last, the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. So it says here, and after this, Yahushua was walking in Galilee. Remember that Galilee is a circuit. It means a circuit or a circle. And just like the sun has its circuit and it ends in a year, um, the earth has a time set up, right? Which is pretty much 6,000 years to get to the millennium of Shabbat, the seventh millennium, the Shabbat of rest, that will be different than the previous 6 days or 6,000 years, because 1,000 years is like a day in Yahweh's eyes, right? So it says here, and after this, Yahushua was walking in Galilee. So it represents the repetition of history, right? History repeats itself. What was is what will be, as Shlomo reveals, right? As he explains, and that which will come already was. So Galilee represents that circle or circuit being restarted in the prophetical sense. That's why Yahushua came and was from Galilee. He lived in Galilee. So was walking in Galilee, for he did not wish to walk in Yehudah, right? So pretty much he was walking with the what he represents with the lost tribes uh, among the nations, because he didn't want to be in Israel or Jerusalem because of the way it is, right? Because they reject Yahushua and therefore reject anybody who may preach about Mashiach. And that's why the two witnesses will be killed in Jerusalem at the end of their testimony. But it doesn't mean that they will testify during 1,260 days, the 1,260 days within Jerusalem. It doesn't say that. The prophecies throughout the scriptures reveal that actually they come from the nations, just like Moshe and Aharon. They were in Egypt, right? So the same goes with the two witnesses, yet all points to, because of what is written also in Revelation 11, that they will be killed in Jerusalem. So their ministry will somehow end up there. And as you guys know, there is a law, or at least they were trying to pass it. I don't know if it already went through or whatever. And I think it was. That if you try to preach about Yahushua to an adult, you get 1 year in jail. And if you preach to a child, you get 2 years. An underage person, you get 2 years in jail for preaching about the Messiah, Yahushua, or like they would say, like, right, trying to convert somebody. Which is amazing, right? So imagine if the two witnesses, they testify about Yahushua and they end up there. they can be taken because of that. And remember that they will be imprisoned for 10 days, right? As Revelation reveals as well in Revelation 2. So that is the 10 days from Yom Teruah to Yom Kippur, the days of awe. So now going back here, Galil represents that, the repetition of history. Yahushua, after this, as in after the first manifestation, now he came to repeat the history, the circuit. Because remember that just like John the Baptist came with Yahushua HaMashiach, now Eliyahu comes with the witness like Moshe. That's why there are two witnesses in Revelation 11. So, repeating, after this, Yahushua was walking in Galilee, for he did not wish to walk in Yehudah, showing what the prophets revealed, that the second manifestation wouldn't be within Jerusalem, because just like he manifested as the light from the east, the last would manifest as the end of the light, as in the sense of the end of the day, because he comes like a thief in the night, but also like the Son of Righteousness, Malachi 4:2. So he comes as the afternoon. That's why he was represented by what Yahweh did in Exodus 33, when Moshe asked Yahweh to reveal his esteem, his honor, and he showed him his back because he couldn't see the front, the face, and continue to live. So the words used there in Hebrew, and like I said, showing the back, just like when you see the sun in the morning, you see in the front, and when you see it in the afternoon, you're seeing the back. And that's why you're able to see, because he's so far away now, you're able to see directly to the sun. Yet at noon, you're not able because it's too powerful. The light is too powerful. So Yahweh only showed his back on Exodus 33 as representing the afternoon when the sun is going down in the west. So the first manifested as the light in the east, and the last as the afternoon in the west. So that's why here he was walking in Galilee. Remember also that Isaiah says that Yahweh is sitting over the circle of the earth. He doesn't say the ball, but it says the circle. A ball is a three-dimensional, yet circle is two-dimensional, right? So in this case, he is over a circle, the circle of the earth. And that's what Galil also represents. So once again, just to explain the prophetical sense of this verse, after this, meaning this first manifestation, Yahushua was walking in Galilee, the earth among the nations, because remember that in Isaiah, there's also a prophecy that says that he would be from Galilee of the Gentiles. Yet Galilee was part of Israel, yet was seen as a Gentile nation because of the way they would see the people from there, including Mashiach. So in the spiritual is revealing that the last would come from a place as Galil, but from the nations. So here we see he was walking in Galil, as in from the nations, prophesied in Isaiah, and Galil, the circle, meaning on the earth. For he did not wish to walk in Yehudah, meaning on the east, so therefore he would be on the west of that circle, Galil, because the Yahudim were seeking to kill him. Remember that Yahushua, as a child, was taken to Egypt because Herod was trying to kill him. Herod was the king of the Jews at that time. So just like here, the Yehudim were trying to kill him. So he went to the other side, which would be represented by Egypt. So just what I always say, what one fulfills in the literal, the other one fulfills in the spiritual. So Yahushua was taken to Egypt in the literal sense because Herod wanted to kill him. The two witnesses, in this case, the witness like Moshe, would be coming from the west, in the spiritual Egypt, because the same reason, right? They would want to kill the two witnesses. And the feast of the Yehudim was near, the feast of Sukkot. the feast of Sukkot. Remember that the two witnesses, like I mentioned, are trapped on Yom Teruah. 10 days later, the 10th of the 7th month, that is Yom Kippur, that is the day when they would be killed. And then comes Sukkot on the 15th. So it doesn't say that they were on Sukkot, but they were near. So it could be right after Yom Kippur, no doubt about that. We will see if it mentions more regarding time. But I'm just saying it is in that period of time when the two witnesses will fulfill with the 144,000 these feasts that are still in need of fulfillment, right? The last four. So, and the feast of the Yehudim was near the feast of Sukkot. That is the 15th of the 7th month. So his brothers said to him, this is important. His brothers, remember that he had brothers because Miriam, after he had him while she was a virgin, then she was with her husband, Joseph, and they had other children. So he had brothers, unlike what they say in Catholicism, right? For instance, they say that these brothers were actually cousins. But also in Matthew 1:25, we see it is written that Miriam was with Joseph after Yahushua was born. So she didn't remain a virgin, and that is no problem at all. Uh, I'm just saying that because in Catholicism, they change a bunch of things. So they end up creating a false uh, deity, which they call Mary, right? In Mashiach's case, his mom was called Miriam. So his brothers said to him, remember that the brothers actually didn't believe in him, um, at least not all of them. So his brother said to him, get away from here and go into Yahudah, so that your taught ones also see the works that you are doing. So also, as brothers do, they're kind of daring him to do it, right? Like he doesn't want to go because they are trying to kill him. The brothers don't know that and wouldn't believe it. They didn't think their brother was as important as some would say, like their disciples, or I guess sometimes because of what he would say. So they said, get away from here, meaning Galil, and go into Yahudah, right? As if you were to say to two witnesses, like, you should go to Jerusalem, so that your taught ones, meaning the disciples, also see the works that you are doing. For no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly, right? So here they see a contradiction, they see a paradox. However, it is because they are seeing it with their physical eyes or earthly understanding, except instead of doing it with their spiritual understanding through the ruach, which they didn't have, so that's why they couldn't. So it says, "For no one acts in secret." So they are like, so if you want to be known, why would you do things in secret and not tell anybody, right? And that is a key when it comes to Mashiach, when it comes to humility, and also the fact that there is a time for everything, and it is Yahweh, the one who sets each time for each thing that needs to be revealed um, at its own time. So, for no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. Remember that Yahushua is the light. When Yahweh created the light, which he did through his word, because Yahushua is the word, he separated the light from the darkness. When something is secret, is in the darkness, right? Darkness represents secret. So, for no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. So it is as if at that time there was still a mix. So the light was hidden in the secret of Yahweh until he spoke. And then the light, Yahushua, was separated from it, which would be when he died and resurrected in order to show the greatest sign in history of the Almighty who saved his creation through his son. So no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. So in their idea, just as nowadays people doing TikTok videos and a bunch of other things, which is not bad, but I'm talking to the type of videos that people do just to get attention, right? uh, a bunch of things that people do and trends that they follow and repeat and repeat and repeat because that entertains some certain type of people, and that brings them followers or what they believe are followers, and they feel obviously important and many other things, loved and many other things, which most of the time are just illusions. But that's enough for this reality of illusion and those who are earthly of this world. So sadly, also because of the fact that maturity seems to be something of the past generations, no matter how much people grow or how many years they've lived on this earth, there are certain things, and I'm talking like in general society. Obviously, there are exceptions. Blessed be the Most High, but um, that lack of maturity because of the what the enemy has done through society to families and the separation of, uh, well, everything, all the division that he has brought to the world. Um, because of that, sadly, uh, people, no matter how old, they want attention, and a lot of it, right? Like when we were children, and as children, it is normal for them to want attention, right? For several reasons. But then you grow up and you start to understand how that works and why there needs to be a limit and well, everything else regarding that. But nowadays, uh, it is like those things don't exist, or those concepts or ideas or limits. So everybody wants attention, and that is like the age of attention, right? That is like the new drug in a way. So the people of the world would say, no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly, because everybody wants to be known openly, right? And that's why Yahushua 2,000 years ago had to say that whatever you do with your right hand, don't let your left hand know it, right? Like you yourself even need to be uh careful with your own self, right? About what you tell yourself. So imagine with the rest of the world, and I mean, like for instance, even family members many times, they can use things against you when they are angry or whatever. So um many reasons why one may be, just a second, uh should be careful of what he speaks or with whom. um But I repeat, for no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. So, like I said, the way Yahushua was doing things to them was a paradox, was not right, was going backwards. So they would think, like the flesh would do, that perhaps he couldn't do what he would say, and that's why he would remain in secret, which is one of the things that some people believe is what Judas was thinking when he betrayed Mashiach. He was trying to push him to show his power over Rome and ended up getting him killed. So if you do these works, the brother said, you show yourself to the world. Show yourself to the world. For even so, also remember, just in case, because I've talked a lot, the feast of Sukkot was approaching, and his brothers were saying you should show yourself to the world. So pretty much they were saying you should take advantage of the feast of Sukkot, which is one of the three feasts that people from everywhere have to come to Jerusalem, so you can show yourself and uh, say you are the Messiah to all of them, right? So they were pretty much saying that. However, like I said in the beginning, Sukkot is the feast that still needs to be fulfilled. And it will be fulfilled after the resurrection of the two witnesses, when the many will go on the second Exodus towards the harvest, the seventh trumpet. That's why Sukkot was a feast to go to the mountains, pretty much what it represents, to live in tents for 7 days. So going back here, for no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these works, show yourself to the world. Like Sukkot is the perfect feast because people from all over the world will come to Jerusalem, right? Most Yahudim, but that would be able to get to Jerusalem. And perhaps even where it says world, it could say earth. And in the literal sense, it would mean that the land of Israel. In the spiritual, the whole earth, of course. So it says, for even his brothers did not believe in him. So imagine that, right? Because we were taught about Mashiach, even though we weren't taught the true doctrine or the true name, but we did know about the man who came to the world to die for our sins, and he suffered for us, and he came through a virgin. So we know all of those things, and most of us, I guess, believed it for most of our lives. And then we read this, and it's kind of amazing because we read all of the miracles that he performed. So it is amazing that his family members did not believe in him. Yet that shows what the scripture says, how it would be fulfilled. And like I said, he was in Galilee, meaning repetition. So the same would happen in a way with the two witnesses in several ways. So for even his brothers did not believe in him. Remember, like I said, that in the literal, it is talking about um, the historical point of view or um, details that manifested during the first coming of Mashiach, of Yahweh to this earth through the tribe of Yehudah. And the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth is through the tribe of Yosef. Remember, like I said, in the literal sense, the historical, and in the spiritual, the prophetical. So the coming of the last. The last comes through Joseph. And remember that Joseph, uh, he was given some special clothing that his brothers didn't get. And he had some dreams that he told his brothers, and his brothers didn't like it. So they didn't believe in him and in his prophecies. Just like, for instance, the many, the Christians, and obviously the rest of religions don't believe in what we see regarding the manifestation of the son of Joseph. So interestingly, we see here, for even his brothers did not believe in him, right? Which, like I said, it is unbelievable to think it regarding Yahushua HaMashiach and all his miracles. But in the prophetical, it connects with what happened with Joseph and his brothers. And the last happens to come from Joseph. So we see that the same will happen. Yahushua therefore said to them, listen to this. Yahushua therefore said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. So he wasn't, well, he was saying several things here. One, that it wasn't his time to die yet, and the Yehudim were trying to kill him. Also, that Sukkot was not the feast in which he had to die. He had to die on Matzot, right? On Pesach, which mixes with Matzot, unleavened bread, that is. So it wasn't that feast in which he had to die. Sukkot was not a feast that needed to be fulfilled in his time. When it comes to the second manifestation, like I said, the feast before Sukkot is Yom Kippur, and that's when the two witnesses die. So by the time that Sukkot comes, the two witnesses would be resurrected already. So it says, Yahushua therefore said to them, my time has not yet come, right? To be revealed also, to be revealed to everybody. He was only being revealed to a few, the disciples. it wasn't the time like with the two witnesses, he would reveal himself to the 144,000, and with time, because obviously 144,000 are a lot more than 12, but they are from the 12 tribes. So that's what they represent, right? The disciples represented the 144,000, while the many are the rest of believers in the world. And the two witnesses, in this case, the witness like Moshe, will not reveal himself as what he would be according to scriptures to the many. However, he would do it with the few who are represented by the disciples. So the brothers were saying that he should reveal himself to everybody, just like he was revealing himself to the disciples, because of most likely what the disciples were saying, because his own brothers did not believe in him. So Yahushua therefore said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. Because other than Mashiach, every human needs to take advantage of the favor of Yahweh given to us through Yahushua, as in asking for forgiveness and acting according to his will so that the reward may be given, right? As a good servant and a good child through Yahushua. So my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. Because Sukkot is a commandment from Leviticus 23. So it is like everybody should fulfill the feast according to the commandment in the Torah. But when it comes to the actual fulfillment of it, which is, like I said, the second Exodus, it wasn't the time for that 2,000 years ago. All right. So, verse 7, it is impossible for the world to hate you. It's interesting how he goes from that conversation to this, right? Obviously, there's a connection. That's why he's talking about it. On the one hand, it is because he knows his brothers don't believe in him, and they are kind of pushing him because they want to like see to believe in a certain way. But Yahweh wasn't revealing who Mashiach is to them, and he had a reason for it. Also, because they didn't believe that the Yehudim were trying to kill him. They didn't believe that he was hated actually by the priests, by the religious leaders, whom everybody in society would think were great and righteous. So it is impossible for the world to hate you. This is interesting because he tells the disciples and us that we will be hated for his name's sake, that because he was hated, we would be hated, right? But when he's talking to his own brothers in the flesh who didn't believe in him, he tells them it is impossible for the world to hate you. He's telling them you're worldly, you're earthly, and that's why you're not able to understand. It is impossible for the world to hate you, but he hates me because I bear witness of it, that its works are wicked. Right? Like I said, since Yahushua is the light, he shows what is done in the darkness. And normally people do in the darkness that which they don't want anybody to see. So Yahushua came as the light, so that's why everybody hated him. But they were of the darkness of the world, so they weren't hated by the world. But also, going back to the last interpretation, the sword interpretation regarding the coming of the last, remember that the last is the witness like Moshe. Yahushua himself came as the lawyer. The first manifestation was as the lawyer. The last comes as a witness. Eliyahu, another witness. The unity of first and last makes the judge, and the disciples are the juror. So Lucifer is the accuser, right? So here Yahushua says, I bear witness. So he speaks as a witness, therefore as the witness like Moshe, that its works are wicked. So obviously, I repeat, Yahushua is the light. So this fulfills obviously with him. But in the spiritual sense, and the way it is written is so that we may understand prophetically that it refers to the coming of the witness like Moshe, who will also be hated, and whose brothers, like those of Joseph, won't believe. You go up to this feast, to this Moed, right? So Yahushua tells his brothers, you go up. You go up to this feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, for my time has not yet been filled. Now, this that I'm about to say is very important, and it shows the importance between the literal and the spiritual, the separation of it, the understanding of it, not to fall into doubt or other things, because Yahushua doesn't lie. He doesn't contradict himself. Yet, look at this. You go up to this festival. I am not yet going up to this feast, for my time has not yet been filled. And having said this to them, he stayed in Galilee, right? But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not openly, but as it were in secret, right? So he ended up going. Now, we could say in the literal that he didn't go when they said or when they went. So, in a way, even in the literal, he wasn't lying. He just didn't, he just went later on for a different reason than what they were expecting. So that's why he told them what he told them. But even in any way we see it, Yahushua was speaking as he always did in parables or allegories or simply spiritually. So we see that he says, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. I already mentioned what that means, but then he goes on and says, it is impossible for the world to hate you like it hates Mashiach, the light, and it will hate the witnesses of the light, those who as menorot, as lampstands, will give the light of Mashiach, the two witnesses of Revelation 11, who will be hated by the whole world so much that when they are killed, the people, the nations of the world will give gifts to each other. So they will try to make their day, the day of their death, a feast, a holy day, as they would say. So it is impossible for the world to hate you, but it hates me. So, like I said, Revelation 11, the two witnesses are hated because I bear witness of it, that its works are wicked. Now, you go up to this feast. You go up to this feast. See how it says go up. In a way, in the literal, is aliyat, which means the fact that those are the three feasts in which we have to go up to Jerusalem. And it is always spoken of as going up because it refers to the spiritual, like going to a higher level spiritually by being in the feast. So no matter where we are geographically or spiritually during the feast, the idea is to go up. So you go up to the feast, to this feast. Also, remember that when the feast manifests, the second Exodus, Yahushua, he said, go up to the mountains. So you go up. So you go up to this feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, right? So what he's saying is, I am not yet fulfilling this feast. So he's not lying at all, even though he went later on. He's simply saying, this is not the year of the fulfillment of the feast of Sukkot. So I am not going up to this feast. So he went in secret. Now, also in the spiritual that I've been saying regarding the manifestation of the two witnesses, it is quite possible, since it says, I am not yet going up to this feast, that during the 7 days of Sukkot, which will be pretty much the second Exodus, when the 144,000 have gone to the wilderness, it is quite possible that Mashiach and the two witnesses, as during the transfiguration, which happened at the end of the Feast of Sukkot, they will manifest to the chosen few. Who knows if to all, but there's a possibility, of course, because he says, I am not yet. So there will be a time when he will go up with. Going up to this feast, for my time has not yet been filled. So he's saying, my time has not yet been filled. I haven't been killed to fulfill my time. So the feast of Sukkot cannot be fulfilled. Now, why is that? Because remember that Sukkot is a feast that represents when Israel went out of Egypt into the wilderness, the desert, right? And they lived on tents, in tents during their 40 years in the desert. So they had tents for 40 years in the wilderness. In fact, the first place where they stopped after going out of Egypt was called Sukkot. They went out on the 15th of the first month, which before they went out to them was the 7th month because they were on a different calendar. Yahweh told them this is the first month from now on because they thought it was the 7th month. But it's interesting that in the true calendar, Sukkot is celebrated on the 15th of the 7th month, even though when it comes to the remembrance of it is from the Exodus that happened on the 15th of the first month. However, I repeat, when they were in Egypt because of slavery, they had a different calendar, and to them was the 7th month. So there are a lot of connections regarding that. But going back to the point I wanted to make, Sukkot, I repeat, has 7 days, and it happens because of the time that Israel was living in tents, right? And for Israel to be able to go to live in the wilderness in tents, they had to sacrifice a lamb first, right? Because they came to Pesach on the 14th, they prepare the lamb, right? When it comes to the 15th, they killed the lamb, they ate the lamb, and went out at midnight from Egypt into the wilderness. That was the 15th at midnight, and they ended up going to Sukkot. So on the 15th of the 7th, we celebrate Sukkot. But Sukkot was only possible because of the sacrifice of the lamb. So Yahushua was saying, I, as the lamb, haven't been sacrificed. So this feast, Sukkot, cannot be fulfilled yet, because Sukkot comes after Pesach and Matzot. And Pesach and Matzot had to be fulfilled with the death of Mashiach and the resurrection during the Omer Reshit. As I was reading, you go up to this feast. By the way, I don't like to say festival because it is possible, it is believed that it comes from feast to Baal, a feast to Baal. So a feast which in Hebrew was Moed, right? A time set up, an appointment with the Most High. So you go up to this feast, to this Moed. I am not yet going up to this feast, for my time has not yet been filled. So he was talking spiritually. And having said this to them, he stayed in Galilee. So like I said, he didn't lie because he stayed for a while. He didn't say how long. So in Galilee, as in the earth. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, he also went up, not openly, but as it were in secret. So like I said, it is possible in the spiritual that when the 144,000, as his brothers, go to the mountains, as they had gone up to the feast during Sukkot, the second Exodus, he will be among them, among the chosen few, perhaps in secret for some. The Yahudim, therefore, were seeking him at the feast. So it says the Yehudim, right? The ones that wanted to kill him pretty much, and I'm sure others, therefore were seeking him at the feast and said, where is he? Just like during Sukkot, not only the chosen few will go to the mountains, but there will be others, just like it happened during the Exodus, the first Exodus. So there was a shadow of things to come. And also because of the 10 virgins, right? 5 foolish ones and 5 wise ones. So the 5 wise virgins will be the 144,000 that will be harvested. Now, I say that because if the second Exodus happens during Sukkot, which lasts 7 days, most likely during those 7 days, there will be some people having doubts and saying, where is he? When is it going to happen? Just like it happened when the first time that Sukkot manifested, and then came Shavuot when they were in the mountain Sinai to get the tablets with the 10 commandments. Moshe went up for 40 days and 40 nights, and they said, where is he? Where is he? So they told Aharon, make us a calf. And they made a golden calf, and they ended up committing idolatry, thinking they were worshiping Yahweh through the golden calf, just like many do, worshiping, thinking they worship the Almighty through an image, and that is idolatry. So that was one of the reasons why they ended up doing 40 years around in the wilderness. But those 40 years in the wilderness represent, just like the 40 days of Moshe in heaven getting the tablets, represents the 40 jubilees, 2,000 years, 40 jubilees from the first to the second manifestation. So people are now saying, where is he? Where is he? So they end up falling in idolatry. And then eventually, during the 7 days of Sukkot, there will be some saying, where is he? Where is he? Looking for the manifestation, but not with faith. So therefore, won't get it the way they think or they expect. And there was much grumbling about him among the crowd. Some were saying he is good. Now, remember that in Hebrew, that is tov. Good is the word tov. Remember that Yahushua is the life. He said he's life. When they called him good, he said, why do you call me good? There is only one good, and is the one who is in heaven. So when they called him good, he said, no, I am not, is the one in heaven. And there are reasons, many reasons why that is. One of them, because just by being in the flesh and being tempted as he was after the 40 days in the wilderness, in fasting, he is one step lower than the Almighty, the Most High in the heavens, just by being in the flesh, just by taking that step, because he says that he became poor in order to give us the riches, because he, being rich, became poor to give us the inheritance, right? So by poor means entering this reality in the flesh, and by being in the flesh, having the possibility through hunger and thirst and whatever, of being tempted as he was, yet he didn't sin. He didn't fall in that temptation, and that made him uh defeat the enemy at the end through his sacrifice, having fulfilled all the commandments without falling. So now he said that there's only one who is good, but then he says that he is the life, and he is the way, and he is the door, and he is the truth, right? The water, etc. So the thing here is that, remember that in the garden there were two trees. Well, there were many trees, but there were two that were that had more attention than the rest, that were key. And those were the tree of good, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. Yahushua, who came to fulfill the literal, the letter, he actually died on a tree, right? As it would be written in Hebrew. Um, on a cross made with wood, which is called basically in Hebrew tree. Wood is the same word as tree. So he died on a tree, as it is written also in Deuteronomy, that cursed he who is hanged from a tree. And that's why it is also written that he, being the blessing, the biggest blessing of being forgiven of our sins, became a curse by taking all of our sins on him on the cross. He became a curse to give us the blessing, because Deuteronomy says that cursed he who is hanged on a tree. So he was hanged on wood. Why? Because he is the fruit of life. He became the tree of life. So that's why when they called him good, it is like calling him the tree of knowledge of good. And he said, no, as saying, I am the tree of life. The last, who comes as the prodigal son, is the tree of knowledge of good, but also evil, because of being the prodigal son. He fell, but then gets up. So he has those two parts of knowledge through the Ruach that Yahweh gives him. Just like when Paul was in the letter and then Yahushua calls him, and then he uses everything that he called garbage, he's able to recycle it, and through the Ruach find many mysteries that he was able to then reveal to everybody else who read his writings. So the last uses that as in the firebrand taken from the fire, meaning from pretty much he who was, because of his sins, would fall in Sheol, in hell, through forgiveness is taken from it. But since he came from the fire, becomes the fire that now Yahweh uses to destroy the enemy through Yahushua. So Yahushua is the water, the last is the fire. Yahushua came as the tree of life, the last is the tree of knowledge of the Father. And that's why after the first and last have come, the knowledge of Yahweh will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And the sea are a representation of the nations. So that's why the last will have to come through the nations, just like Paul was sent to the nations, to the Gentiles. So going back to the verse, and there was much grumbling about him among the crowd. Some were saying he is good. So we see here another verse that once again shows how in the spiritual is referring prophetically to the coming of the last. Yet we know what Yahushua answered when he was called good. Obviously, when it comes to the goodness of this reality, there's no one as good as him. But he was pretty much saying that there's no one on the level of Yahweh who is goodness itself, right? So there's one thing to do good, and then one other thing to be good. And remember, Yahushua said, if you, talking to humanity, being evil because of the fact that we have sinned, so just through that it's over, can give good gifts to your children. When he asks for a piece of bread, you won't give him a serpent, right? So well, it says when he asks for a piece of bread, you won't give him a stone, and when he asks for a fish, you won't give him a serpent. So if you are able to give good gifts, imagine how much more the Almighty Creator, who is actually good. So there is a huge difference between the goodness that people believe to know or have, and the true goodness, which is Yahweh himself. So then he says, but others were saying no, but he's leading the crowd astray, right? So the same thing will happen with the two witnesses. Some will say their doctrine is correct, but many will say no, they are false prophets, or their doctrine will be very polarizing. And is not their doctrine, is that of Yahweh, of course. I mean, what will come out of their mouth. So not, but no, but he's leading the crowd astray. So it says, verse 13, however, no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Yehudim. So they knew that the Yehudim hated him, so they didn't want to speak that much about him because they didn't want to be seen as crazy for keeping him in mind, pretty much. And about the middle of the feast, about the middle, right? Remember that the feast has 7 days. So the middle is the 4th day. Yahushua came to close the 4th millennium because he is the light of the world. And the light of the world, the sun, was created on the 4th day. So that's why he came on that day to close it, that millennium at the end of the 4th. And the 4th is the middle of the 7th, of the 7 lamps of the menorah, or the 7 days of the week, or the 7 millenniums of human history. So the feast has 7 days. And the way it happens in the true calendar, the 4th is the Shabbat, which is the day of Yahweh, right? So the day of Yahweh, which is exalted above the rest of the days of the week, is like the light that lights the rest of the lamps, just like the Shabbat gives us strength for the rest of the days of the week. So, and about the middle of the feast, Yahushua went up into the set apart place and he was teaching. So he actually ended up revealing himself on the half of the week, the half of the 7 days of Sukkot. And the Yahudim were marveling, saying, how does this man know letters, not having learned? So he didn't have the, like, just like nowadays we would say titles and all of that the world gives, that the system gives, and to which society gives so much importance. Yet we know he is the truth, he is the light, he is the word. So how is he gonna have any ignorance regarding letters, right? He created them. So obviously when it comes to him, what I just mentioned regarding the 2 witnesses, just like for instance with the disciples, they had not studied with the rest of the Pharisees and all of that, as for instance Paul did. That's why I mentioned how he used all of that he then called garbage to bring so many mysteries to light through Yahushua, the Ruach that Yahushua gives us. So, and the Yahudim were marveling, saying, how does this man know letters, not having learned? Yahushua answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. So there you go. He gives them the answer that they were seeking, yet not one that they would understand. My teaching is not mine, right? My doctrine is not mine. Just like Paul would say regarding his doctrine, well, he said his doctrine, but it was revealed to him through the Ruach HaKodesh given to him by the Messiah. And the Messiah received his revelation from Yahweh. So just like Yahweh sends Yahushua, Yahushua sends Mikael, Mikael sends Eliyahu. So Yahushua answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. For Yahushua is the word, Yahweh is the mind. The word comes from the mind. So the word just reveals what the mind is trying to express, right? So he says, my teaching is not mine. It is the teaching of him who sent me, the mind, Yahweh. My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone desires to do his desire, right? If anyone wills to do his will, in Hebrew, ratzon, he shall know. This is key. And interestingly enough, is verse 17. 17 is the numerical value of the word tov, which means good. It's a very good verse. And remember that the last is the desire of the nations. Yahushua is him whom you seek, as we see in Malachi 3:1. There are one whom you seek, as we seek forgiveness of sins, and one whom the nations desire. That is the last, as in you desire a gift, you desire the reward, you desire basically justice, etc. So let me see something on here. You see here, the Yehudim therefore were seeking him. Yahushua is whom you seek. Malachi 3:1. Yet here we see that he says, if anyone desires to do his desire, he shall know concerning the teaching whether it is from Yahweh or whether I speak from myself. So this is key because in order to recognize the 17, the Tov, the good one, the last, the witness like Moshe, who is the good shepherd, Yahushua reveals that his sheep know his voice and recognize him through his voice. Yahushua is the word. His messenger is the voice. Just like you have a mind who thinks of a word and then you reveal it through the voice. Michael is the voice of the archangel, as Thessalonians says, the voice of the shofar. So the way to recognize the good shepherd is through the voice, and the voice reveals the teaching. So what Yahushua is saying here, which obviously applies to him, is something key that applies to the last, key for the chosen few to understand in order to recognize. If anyone desires to do his desire, he shall know concerning the teaching, whether it is from Yahweh or whether I speak for myself. He who speaks from himself is seeking his own steam, right? This is something that his brothers didn't understand when they were saying, if you want to be known, you shouldn't be doing these things in secret. Go to the feast and reveal yourself, right? So Yahushua is saying something that they should have hear. Well, actually, most likely they were there hearing. So it says, he who speaks from himself is seeking his own steam, right? If you do things um, for others to worship you, if you claim things regarding yourself, then that testimony is empty. However, Yahushua is the truth. He wasn't going to lie. So at times he would say things because it was the time to reveal them, as regarding himself being the light, the life, um, the truth, etc. Things that others would claim was him being the opposite of humble, right? Um, so we need to understand the context. Yet Yahushua himself would say, the works that I do, they speak for myself. I don't have to say anything. And if I say it's true because I know who I am, but I am not giving a testimony of myself. I'm just giving a testimony, a witness of Yahweh, for everybody to know Yahweh. That was the point of Yahushua's work, for the world to know Yahweh. But now that Yahushua has gone up, Yahweh would manifest on the earth as the last to give honor to the Son. So just like the first gave honor to Yahweh, now the last gives honor to the first and to Yahweh, of course. So he who speaks from himself is seeking his own steam, but he who seeks the steam of the one who sent him is true. But he who seeks the steam of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. So this is the way that Yahweh did things because he's humble. He needed to do things in this reality, which is uh dual, right? It has a duality. Everything in this reality has duality. So Yahweh created it this way and then fulfill the prophecies as the first and the last. Because if he would manifest just as one, as he is one in his reality, which is the eternal reality, when it comes to the temporal, is duality because it has a beginning and an end. So for Yahweh to manifest in this reality, he would have to um do it according to the laws of this reality because he is just, he's righteous. So he would have to come as first and last, so that the first would talk of the last and the last of the first, and the testimony wouldn't be empty. So he who speaks from himself is seeking his own steam. That's what the enemy does. Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High. He wants people to see him as the Most High without him giving honor to the Most High. So pretty much Yahweh sent Hillel, but Hillel ended up cutting ties with Yahweh so that the honor given to him wouldn't go to the Most High, to whom it belongs, right? So Yahushua is saying if one is looking for his own honor, then he is false. But he who gives honor to the one who sent him, he is true. That is the way to recognize one sent by Yahweh and one who isn't. And that is Messiah himself speaking. And I say that because the false Messiah will ask for the honor. He will want the honor himself. And he won't speak about Yahushua the first and not about Yahweh as the true Most High. He who speaks from himself is seeking his own esteem. But he who seeks the esteem of the one who sent him is true. So Yahushua was seeking the esteem of Yahweh. The last who is sent by Yahushua seeks the esteem of Yahushua, as we see in Revelation 22 when Yahushua says that he is sending his messenger. And that's why in Revelation 6, Yahushua opens the seal and then his messenger manifests on the earth as the rider of the first horse, the white horse. That's why he also comes on a white horse in Revelation 19 for the war of Harmagedon, after everything has been fulfilled, the last week of Daniel. So he who seeks the esteem of the one who sent him is true. Like I said, Yahushua sends the last. And he says, I am sending my messenger, my malach, Mikael, to give testimony of these things in the congregation. So he has to be on the earth because he has to go to the congregations, represented by the 7 in Revelation 2 and Revelation 3. And he needs to testify. Why? Because he is the witness. So then he says, but he who seeks the esteem of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Verse 19, did not Moshe give you the Torah? So look at that. He's on Sukkot in the middle of, he's saying all of this that he's been saying and everything that I've been explaining. And then he mentions Moshe. And like I said, in the spiritual, this is referring to the coming of the witness like Moshe, a descendant of Joseph. Did not Moshe give you the Torah? Yet no one of you does the Torah. This is amazing. That is huge what he's saying. And he's not saying and you don't fulfill the whole of the Torah. He's talking in general. You don't do the Torah at all. Why? Because the Torah that they had was according to the letter, because of the interpretation given to them by the Malach, the accuser, who didn't actually understand it because he doesn't have the Ruach HaKodesh, which Yahushua gives to us, right? It came to us through Yahushua, so it skipped the angels. So Hillel doesn't have the true interpretation of the Torah. He gave an interpretation, and that is the one that the Jews have in the Talmud. The true interpretation is the one that Yahushua gives us through the new covenant, which is based on love. Love Yahweh with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And with those 2 commandments, you fulfill the whole Torah. Did not Moshe give you the Torah, yet no one of you does the Torah? Why do you seek to kill me? So he's saying if you did the Torah, you wouldn't want to kill me. You would want to recognize who the Messiah is. Did not Moshe give you the Torah, yet no one of you does the Torah? Why do you seek to kill me? The crowd answered and said, you have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? They knew some were seeking to kill him. And maybe there were some who didn't know, and they felt offended by what Yahushua said, just like many would nowadays. So as he says openly, why do you seek to kill me? The crowd answered and said, you have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Right? So they go as far as saying that the Messiah himself, Yahushua, the truth, the light, the life, the way, actually had a demon. So imagine if they said that about him, what will they say about us? right? So we shouldn't feel offended. We shouldn't feel any type of way because it would be just a fulfillment of. If because of us teaching the scriptures and the true doctrine, we are called something like that, right? Yahushua answered and said to them, I did one work and you all marvel. I did one work and you all marvel. Because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe. So this is a very, very important verse. And isn't it amazing, brothers? And I don't know the ones hearing right now who also watch the studies in Spanish. I find, well, it seems we only do one study in English a week. And if we grow in number, I am willing to do two a week, but only if we grow in numbers. So I'm gonna give you the homework of bringing more people to the channel. Now I know we're shadow banned, so I understand if it is hard, like for people to find us, and because of our doctrine, it is hard for people to want to continue hearing. But um, what I want to say, it's been like we've been talking about circumcision this week, right? When we read, uh, well, we read John and we read Genesis. When Yahweh gave Elohim gave circumcision to Abraham, and that happened before the Torah was given to Moshe, right? So the circumcision was given to Abraham through Elohim, right? Elohim gave the circumcision to Abraham. Later on in time, right, Abraham had Yitzhak, Yitzhak had Jacob, Jacob had the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes had their children, and then 70 of them went into Egypt. And then after about 100 more years, they started being enslaved, and then Moshe came, and then they were redeemed from Egypt, right? And we received the Torah. So there's a lot of time from Abraham receiving by Elohim, receiving the circumcision, and the Torah being given. So just by that fact, we understand that the circumcision is something separate than the law. It is united because Moshe wrote about it, but it was given before the law itself was given. Now, with that in mind, now let's read this. I did one work and you all marvel because he healed a person on Shabbat. So they couldn't believe that he was doing that on Shabbat. To them, he was breaking the Torah, he was breaking the law, he was breaking the Shabbat because to them, that was a work, that was a effort, the fact that he healed somebody. And they were obviously envious that they couldn't. So they wanted to blame him of something. And instead of realizing that he's the Messiah because he did something like that, he had the power to heal somebody, which they couldn't. Instead of that, they end up accusing him. So they are doing what the enemy does, accuse. Hillel is the accuser. So the fact that they were accusing him of breaking the Torah shows that they were followers of Hillel spiritually. That's why they didn't recognize the Messiah, because he's the son of Yahweh, not of Hillel. Yahushua answered and said to them, I did one work and you all marvel. Because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe, but from the fathers. So you see that before we continue? Because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision. There are several things we could say here and what circumcision represents. Remember that there was the circumcision of the flesh, of the foreskin, of the male organ to represent the lower desires of the flesh being cut off. So that was a representation of something that we needed to do through the Ruach HaKodesh given to us through the new covenant made by Yahushua, in which we get a new heart. So we get the circumcision of the heart and we get the circumcision of the ear. We finally have ears to hear when we have the Ruach, right? So the true circumcision is that of the spirit, which was represented by the circumcision of the flesh. They didn't have the true circumcision, so they couldn't understand Yahushua, who had the Spirit, who brought the Spirit. They were under the flesh, so they only had the circumcision of the flesh, not understanding the true Torah. So much so that they are accusing Yahushua of breaking the Torah for saving somebody on Shabbat. Yet Yahushua starts telling them regarding circumcision. And in a way, he says, because of this, as in Yahweh did everything in the order that he did to trap them in their own devices. So because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe. So the circumcision is not of Moshe, and it's not of Yahweh, because Yahushua didn't say is of Yahweh. He says, but from the fathers. So the circumcision is attributed to the fathers because it was Abraham who started it from Elohim, and Elohim is a title that also connects with the authorities with whom we are in battle, according to Ephesians, because they had to do with the flesh and therefore the interpretation of the letter. So because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Shabbat. The Shabbat is of Moshe, because the Shabbat was on the 10 commandments, right? The Shabbat is one of the 10 commandments. Now, I say of Moshe because Moshe was the one who came down with the tablets, and because the true Shabbat is the millennium. So there are several levels: that of the fathers, that of Moshe, that of the Father Yahweh. The time that death ruled over the earth, represented by the circumcision, cutting that part that represents death. Then came the law and the prophets. So that is what Moshe gave, understood as they could, without having the Ruach HaKodesh that Yahushua brought to bring the favor in which we receive the true understanding and fulfillment of the commandments through the favor and the truth. Because Yahushua said, the hour is coming and now is when the true worshipers will worship Yahweh in spirit and in truth. That is in John 4. That means that before Yahushua, they weren't worshiping Yahweh because they weren't worshiping in truth nor in spirit. They were worshiping, therefore, in falsehood and flesh. So because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Shabbat. So you break the Shabbat, causing pain and shedding blood of a child on a Shabbat to make the circumcision, which is not of the Torah or of Yahweh. So you do something that is not of Yahweh, but it is a tradition of the fathers because it was just a representation. And you circumcise a man on the Shabbat. If a man receives circumcision on the Shabbat, so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, right? Because it is inside of the Torah because Moshe wrote it, but it was not part of the commandments given by Moshe. It was something given by Elohim to Abraham. I repeat, the fathers, the patriarchs. If a man receives circumcision on the Shabbat, so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, and they are not talking about the actual circumcision that would not doing it would break the Torah. They are talking about the eighth day, because the Torah says that the circumcision had to be performed on the eighth day. So if the eighth day from birth was a Shabbat, they would do the circumcision on Shabbat, not understanding that the Shabbat is of the 10 commandments and the circumcision is of the fathers. So there is a different level. One is more real than the other. And still the one that is more real had a realer, more real manifestation through the Ruach HaKodesh. And that is the same separation of the temple, the most set apart place, the realest, the set apart place, and then the courtyard. So that's why the courtyard represents the time in which death ruled, the first around 2,000 years. Then the law and the prophets, that is the set apart place, and then the favor and the truth, that is the most set apart place in the temple. So, and you circumcise a man on the Shabbat. If a man receives circumcision on the Shabbat, so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, are you wroth with me because I made a man entirely well on the Shabbat? He couldn't understand, right? It makes no sense. How could they be mad and want to kill him because he healed somebody on the Shabbat, yet they were cutting people on the Shabbat? Not just people, children. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. That is very important. So do not judge according to the flesh, like the circumcision was of the flesh. Do not judge according to appearance, right? So we must judge according to the spirit, which is invisible. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. So this is also important because a lot of people in Christianity, when you try to talk about certain things that the scripture reveals, they say that you shouldn't judge. However, we see here that Yahushua is telling us to judge, just not to judge according to appearances, but we should judge. Because if we don't, we are crazy. We will make mistakes all the time. So we must judge, yet we shouldn't condemn through our judgment. We shouldn't condemn others, right? Because only Yahweh knows what he has for each person and what every person has in store in their future during the time we have in this reality. So do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Therefore, some of them from Jerusalem said, is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? So you see how the same people, and mean the crowd, they were not the same people, but people in the crowd, some of them were saying, you have a demon, who's trying to kill you? Yet others were saying, but isn't he the one they're trying to kill? So it was known. And this shows that Yahushua wasn't lying. Is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? And see, he speaks boldly, and they say none at all to him. So they were amazed because they were like, well, if they're trying to kill him, why don't they capture him? But since they didn't have anything really, uh, at least they didn't have still the false witnesses and the things that they were acquiring. um, they couldn't get him because they needed the people to be in line with them. They needed everybody to agree with them. So they couldn't do it at that time, even though he was speaking openly, and also because it wasn't his time to die. So Yahweh didn't allow it, of course. It wasn't the time for the darkness to manifest. So it says, therefore, some of them from Jerusalem said, is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? And see, he speaks boldly, and they say none at all to him. Could it be that the rulers truly know that this is truly the Messiah? So the fact that they wouldn't capture him, even though it was being said that they wanted to kill him when he was talking openly, made others believe that perhaps they were actually about to accept him as Messiah. But we know, so then the doubt comes, right? Like it happens with the flesh, the enemy, everything. But we know where this one is from. And when the Messiah comes, no one knows where he is from. So this, as other verses in scripture show, that depending on who was talking, what doctrine they had, just like nowadays, right? It depends on when you speak to a Catholic, the idea they have of the end times, which is pretty much none. They rather not talk about it. A Christian, the idea they have about the rapture, and then you talk to another Christian, they have a different idea about the rapture, and then you talk to another Christian, they have another idea because they have at least 3 doctrines regarding the rapture, and that's just talking about one. You talk to a 7-day Adventist, and then you have another doctrine, etc., etc. So it depends, just like it did in that time with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and others. They had different ideas and interpretations of prophecy. So some had the idea that the Messiah had to come from heaven physically, in the literal sense, so he wouldn't have to be born. Some knew that he had to be born in Bethlehem, but they only knew that Yahushua lived in Galilee, so they didn't make the connection that he actually was born in Bethlehem, yet he then went to live in Galilee, in Nazareth. So there were some with some doctrines, others with other doctrines, and they didn't understand how all the doctrines came together in Yahushua and how they all fulfilled, because he came spiritually from heaven, invisible because he was in spirit, and entered the flesh through the genes of Miriam, who gave birth to him while being a virgin, like it was prophesied in Isaiah. He was born in Bethlehem, as prophesied, and then he went to live in Galilee, as prophesied. So many other things, yet they only had a part according to the doctrine to which they belong. So according to that doctrine, their idea, and therefore whatever they actually knew about Mashiach would make them many times doubt, because of how it works, that no one is a prophet in their own land. So, but we know where this one is from. And when the Messiah comes, no one knows where he's from. Right? So they had an idea that was not completely correct. Yahushua therefore cried out in the set apart place. In the set apart place. So remember that he's in between the courtyard and the most set apart place. He was in the set apart place, which is in the middle, just like he was in the middle of the 7 days of Sukkot, the middle of the feast, as the shamash, as the candle in the middle that lights the rest of the candles in the menorah. So Yahushua therefore cried out in the set apart place, teaching and saying, "You both know me, and you know where I am from. And I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know." This is amazing. And this is, I think, the first time I'm going to say it like this. Look at this. So he says, they say, but we know where this one is from. And when the Messiah comes, no one knows where he's from, right? As in where he comes from. However, you look at how Yahushua answers. Yeah. Yahushua therefore cried out in the set apart place, teaching and saying, "You both know me," as in me in the flesh, in this 30 years of life that he had, and a little bit more by this time already. "And you know where I am from," as in Galilee. "And you know where I am from. And I have not come of myself." So he's saying, right, he did not, and this is huge as well. There are two things that are huge here. "I have not come of myself." That is important, because that means that there is a separation between the Father and the Son. Yahushua comes from the Father, yet many say he is exactly the Father, so that would mean that he comes from himself, right? But he's not saying that I have not come of myself, because if that was the case, then he would give testimony of himself. He would send himself, yet he says that he was sent by the Father. So that is important to understand. So, "And I have not come of myself." So he's talking of himself as a place, because then he says, "But he who sent me," which is the Father, "is true, whom you do not know." So Yahushua came from the reality of the Father, which is the eternal reality. That's why in the beginning there was the Word. So when the beginning started, when time was created, the Word was already there in the eternal reality, that of the Father. So when the Father sent his Word to this reality, which is temporal, he entered this reality in the flesh and lived in a physical place. But in the spirit, he came from the Father, which is the eternal realm, Hamakom, the place in which everything exists. That's why he's omnipresent, because everything that exists is within him. So Yahushua came from the Father, which is the place that no one knows, because it is the eternal reality. And since he, the Father, the true Father Yahweh, isn't known, then they didn't know where Mashiach actually came from, even though they knew that physically he was from Galilee, and even some that he was born in Bethlehem. but they didn't know spiritually where he came from, because he came from the Father, and no one knew the true Father. They were under an angel that fooled them, Hillel, the accuser. I hope all of that was understood. So you both know me, and you know where I am from, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know, which is what they were saying. No one knows where he is from when the Messiah comes. And he says, yeah, you do not know, because you don't know the Father who sent me. And that is amazing. And I say that, I repeat many times, because a lot of people think that everybody knew the Father. They just didn't accept the Messiah. No, they didn't know the Father, and that is why they didn't accept the Messiah. If they had known the Father, they would have known the Son. But I know him, the Father, but I know him because I am from him. So you see how he speaks of Yahweh as the place, because Yahweh is the place. Like I said, in Hebrew, they call Yahweh the Almighty Hamakom, which means the place, which is what it is translated as omnipresent. Remember that Hebrew is a concrete language, so that's why it uses the place. Yet in English, it is abstract, so um, it's a different term, omnipresent. But I know him because I am from him, and he sent me. Now, this is amazing as well, because Yahushua is the eternal life. So, like I always say, he is connected to time, but in this case, the opposite of, which is eternity, right? Time is defeated by eternity. Yahushua the first, because time was created first. That's why in the beginning, Elohim created. So the beginning was the first thing created, that is time. And then he created the heavens, that is space. So space came after. Now, like I said, Yahushua is connected to time, eternal life. The last is connected to space, the space that we will inhabit for eternity. So time and space, first and last, defeated. The time and space will be defeated by first and last. Yahweh through first and last. And here, Yahushua, who brings eternal life, speaks of Yahweh as the place. And remember that Yahweh will manifest on earth through the last, as the Father. And I repeat, as the place, because as he dies and resurrects, through that, he will bring the new Jerusalem to the earth, as we see also in Revelation. So, but I know him because I am from him, and he sent me. So they were seeking to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. So it wasn't his time yet, so Yahweh didn't allow it. Like they wanted, but they just didn't dare to do it in front of everybody. So my point is that Yahweh didn't allow it, and the way it manifested is that they weren't willing to do it, even though they wanted so bad, because his hour had not yet come. Verse 31. And many of the crowd believed in him and said, when the Messiah comes, shall he do more signs than these which this one did? So they started to believe. You see how it says the crowd? They started to believe, which is the first part, the testimony, to believe in your heart. And they believed because of the signs. So they actually believed because they saw things, not because they understood what he was saying or revealing or teaching. So when the Messiah comes, shall he do more signs than these which this one did? So through the signs, they were starting to believe. And I say that because eventually they ended up not believing, most of them at least. When he was about to be sacrificed, everybody was saying, sacrifice him, except the disciples. The Pharisees heard the crowd. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these matters concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to seize him. So when they heard everybody saying that perhaps he was the Messiah, they ended up making the decision of taking him in. They saw that it was being too much. People were starting to believe. Therefore, Yahushua said to them, "Yet a little while I am with you. Then I go to him who sent me." A little while. Remember that it was Sukkot and he was going to die on Pesach. So if it was the next Pesach, then that would be 6 months. Just like you make 2 steps to go front, for instance, there are 2 steps to everything because we are in a reality of duality. The year has 2 halves of 6 months each, in which the feasts, 4 in the first 6 months, 4 in the last 6 months. So therefore, Yahushua said to them, "Yet a little while I am with you. Then I go to him who sent me." So they wanted to kill him already. So he's saying, "Yeah, I'm just going to be here for a little while. And then they're going to kill me. I resurrect and I'll go to the Father. You shall seek me." You see, seek as in he whom you seek, Malachi 3:1. You shall seek me and you shall not find me. Because not only in the literal, he would be at the right hand of the Father, he wouldn't be on this earth for 2,000 years. Also, because of the apostasy, sadly, people would try to find him, yet because of the apostasy, they would end up receiving a false doctrine that led to a different one. You shall seek me and you shall not find me. And where I am, you are unable to come. Right? The right hand of the Father. The Yehudim therefore said to themselves, so he was talking to them, and they were not going to be able to go there if they didn't accept Mashiach, because he is the way, he is the door. But the Yehudim didn't believe. So he says, "And where I am, you are unable to come." The Yehudim therefore said to themselves, "Where is he about to go that we shall not find him? Is he about to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and to teach the Greeks?" So they had no idea about what he was actually saying regarding going to the Father in heaven. So what they interpreted was that perhaps he was going to go, since they were not accepting him as Messiah, that perhaps he would go to the Israelites that were dispersed among the Gentiles and to the Gentiles. So to them that was an offense once again, because he would teach the Gentiles the ways of the Father. And they were really jealous regarding that, and they wouldn't accept that. They wouldn't want that. Yahushua opened the door for the Gentiles, but yeah, just like he sent Peter to the Israelites, as he came to the Israelites, and his name, Peter, is the rock, the stone, and Yahushua is the cornerstone. Peter represents Mashiach the first. Paulus was sent to the Gentiles because the last is among the nations. So here in the spiritual is pretty much saying what the second manifestation would be. Is he about to go to the dispersion among the Greeks, as in among the nations, and to teach the Greeks, as in to teach the nations? What is this word which he said, "You shall seek me and you shall not find me"? What is this word which he said, "You shall seek me and you shall not find me"? And where I am, you are unable to come. Right? They saw that as a riddle and they weren't unable to understand it. And on the last day, the great day of the feast. All right, since it says the great day, it would be the 8th day. Shemini Atzeret. All right, there are 7 days of Sukkot, and the 8th day is the great day, Shemini Atzeret. Just like there is a feast connected to another feast, 7 and then 1, the same happens as in a mirror in the first month when there is Pesach and then Matzot, which lasts 7 days. So 1 and 7, and in the 7th month, 7 and 1. And on the last day, the great day of the feast, Yahushua stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts," now this is key because Since Yahweh tells us to live in tents for 7 days during Sukkot and then remain on for the eighth, but there is a difference between the seventh and the eighth. The seventh are for the nations, and the eighth for Israel as a different, like an extra day that Yahweh wants to spend with humanity and with his people. So, um, just like water can go through the Sukkot, through the tabernacles made with branches and all of that, to reminds us of the Exodus and being in the wilderness. Um, and just like the blessing of Yahweh permeates this reality, which is dark, and those um water droplets, pretty much as his blessing and revelation, come to us through Yahushua, the water of life. Um, in in the feast of Sukkot, it is accustomed to um drop water, to spill water on the floor. And that is why Yahushua waited until this day to say this, as in telling them that that ritual that they would perform was actually to represent him that was before them, and they were rejecting, choosing the rituals, the representations instead of the manifestations, instead of the real manifestation of those shadows. So, and on the last day, so it represents when we will get to the to Sheminiat said it, but also to the last day of the of human history, meaning the Shabbat, the millennium. And on the last day, the great day of the feast, Yahushua stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink." Right? So he's saying that he's the water of life, the water that they represented by spilling water on the Feast of Sukkot, where he brought the Ruach HaKodesh, and that is who reveals everything. If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. And the scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. As the scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. So he who believes in Mashiach, if he believes and drinks of his teaching, of his revelation, he himself will become a fountain of water from whom living waters will flow. Remember that in the literal sense, when Yahushua died, they opened his side and water came out. Out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. And that happened to show that the two parts of the congregation, represented by the water and the blood, the few and the many, as the bride that came out of Adam, out of his side. Then Mashiach, as the last Adam, got his side open when he was asleep, right? When he died, they opened his side, and then water and blood came out, representing the congregation. And this he said concerning the Spirit, which those believing in him were about to receive, right? That water. And this he said concerning the Spirit, which those believing in him were about to receive. For the set apart Spirit was not yet given, because Yahushua was not yet steamed. You see how he says not yet steamed? So when he resurrected, he was steamed. And that was part of what he was referring to when he told the disciples after the transfiguration that they should wait until they would see him in his steamed. So some see that as the very end of time, but he was actually speaking about the resurrection. So since he had not resurrected yet because he had not died, then the Spirit had not been given, but he was speaking prophetically about that when saying this quote. So, because Yahushua was not yet steamed, now listen to this. Many from the crowd, when they heard the word, they said, "This truly is the prophet." So you see how previously it says here, many in the crowd believed in him and said, when the Messiah comes, right? So there were some. Could it be that the rulers truly know that this is truly the Messiah? So there were some who believed that he could be the Messiah, right? Yahushua in the spiritual was talking about Moshe here, because it was prophetically representing the coming of the prophet like Moshe prophesied in Deuteronomy 18:15. So many from the crowd, so others from the crowd, others than the ones that believed he was the Messiah, many from the crowd, when they heard the word, then said, this truly is the prophet. So some of them thought he was the Messiah, others thought he was the prophet like Moshe. Others said, this is the Messiah. You see? So these two verses right here show that the prophet and the Messiah are two different persons, two different envoys of the Most High that were prophetic, that were prophesied to come, and that they were expecting. And according to their doctrines, some believe that he could be the prophet, others believe that he could be the Messiah. So I repeat, many from the crowd, when they heard the word, then said, this truly is the prophet. Others said, this is the Messiah. But others said, does the Messiah then come out of Galilee? So they couldn't believe that the Messiah would come from Galilee, because they saw Galilee and its people as lower in class and in knowledge and whatever and everything. So others said, this is the Messiah. But others said, does the Messiah then comes out of Galilee? Did not the scripture say that the Messiah comes from the seed of David? So before we go there, look how there are three types of people here, just like there are three separations of time, past, present, and future. The time that death rule, the age of death, then the age of the law and the prophets, and then the age of favor and the truth. Um, so the same here with what is being said regarding these three different types of people. Many from the crowd, when they heard the word, then said, this truly is the prophet. Like the many will deal with the last. That would be the set apart place. Others said, this is the Messiah. Like the few, the 144,000 who will deal with the Messiah, the most set apart place. But others, as in the nations, said, does the Messiah then come out of Galilee? The doubters, right? So here we have the three separations. Once again, I repeat, in whom they will accept or end up having to deal with. The prophet, the Messiah, and then the others who doubt. Then does the Messiah then come out of Galilee? They couldn't believe that the Messiah, Yahushua, would be from Galilee. And when it comes to the last, they cannot believe that there's a second manifestation, the repetition of the circle. Did not the scripture say, listen to this, because this is one of the things I was saying. Like previously, there were people who said, but when the Messiah comes, we shouldn't know where he comes from. And Yahushua tells them, actually, you don't know where I come from because you don't know the Father, and I come from the Father. Right? So they didn't understand their own doctrine because they didn't have the Spirit. There was another group that didn't believe that they weren't supposed to know where he came from, but they knew that he was supposed to come from Bethlehem. So how could he be from Galilee? They just didn't know him enough as to know the story of him being born in Bethlehem when they were going to the feast of Matzot and to the um, the time when they were going to count the whole of the people. Did not the scripture say that the Messiah comes from the seed of David and from the village of Bethlehem where David was? So he was born in Bethlehem, but he lived in Galilee. They didn't understand these details. They didn't know those details, so they weren't rejecting him from being because of the fact that he was from Galilee. Micah 5:2 is the prophecy of him being born in Bethlehem. and in 2 Samuel 7:12 and Psalm 89:4, and actually there are more. And from the village of Bethlehem, where David was. So a division came about among the people because of him. A division, just like the division in the temple. Most set apart place, courtyard. A division, as he said, I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring division. Because the light was separated from darkness. And the second day, Yahweh separated the waters above from the waters below. Then the third day, land separated from sea. Then the fourth day, the luminaries, once again to separate the darkness after Yahweh made the firmament, separate darkness from light. And then he made the creatures of the sea and the creatures of the heavens, the birds. So a separation there of creatures. And then he made beasts and humans, another separation of entities. And then Shabbat, so he separated the rest of the days from the last, just as he separated the days of work from rest. So a division came about among the people because of him. And some of them wished to take him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers therefore came to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said to them, why do you not bring him? Why did you not bring him? The officers answered, never has any man spoken like this man. So the officers, some of them, like they had orders to bring him, but when they heard him, they realized he wasn't crazy and he was actually was making more sense than the rest of the Pharisees and their religious leaders. So they didn't see any sense in taking him. Never has any man spoken like this man. The Pharisees therefore answered them, have you also been led astray? So look what the Pharisees do, just like Satan does. They use manipulation. They try to make them feel dumb, less. Have you also been led astray? As saying, so have you become stupid or something? And that hits the ego, right? Their pride. And some of them, just because of that, will say, no, are you crazy? How do you think that? Any one of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? This is amazing because that shows their pride, their ego. I repeat, the leaven of the Pharisees, that hypocrisy, that haughtiness, that a bunch of other things. So has any one of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? So they pretty much saying, if the Pharisees and the rulers don't believe in him, and they are so smart and important, why would you believe? That makes no sense, really. But in their world, is all that made sense. And through that, they would manipulate others not to believe because they were saying, we are the ones who know. You are dumb. If we don't believe, how can you believe? If you believe, it's because you don't know better. Right? That's what they would say, and that's the same thing that they will use in these days. Just like they tell us when we talk about the truth and about the lies that they have told us in school and TV and all of that. So, has anyone of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the Torah is accursed. You see that? So the Pharisees, who were supposed to be the leaders, right? Those who led the people to Yahweh, were actually cursing the people. Instead of purifying the people, they were cursing the people. Instead of teaching to the people, they were saying the people were too dumb to know. Just like it happens nowadays, because I have spoken, like I have told you, I have spoken with Christian teachers, Christian pastors regarding the name, and they have said, yeah, you are right, but I cannot teach that because people will not understand. They are not ready. And they say other words that are pretty much to say that they are dumb. Yet they are their teachers. They are the ones who should teach them. And if they don't understand, it's because they are not good teachers. But this crowd that does not know the Torah is accursed. So they're trying to manipulate these guards that they were sending to bring Yahushua, telling them, you're stupid. These people that are believing don't know anything about the Torah. They don't know the Torah. We know the Torah. We're better than everybody. And if we don't understand, and if we don't believe, then why would you? So, but this crowd that does not know the Torah is accursed. Nakdimon, right? Nicodemus, he who came to Yahushua by night, he was a Pharisee, and he went to Yahushua because he didn't want everybody to know. Nakdimon, uh, Nicodemus, he who came to Yahushua by night, being one of them, said to them, does our Torah judge the man unless it hears first from him and knows what he is doing? So he is trying to be just, right? Like the Torah is just. So he's reminding them, just a moment, but doesn't the Torah say that we should hear him first and know everything in detail before we kill him? So Nicodemus is telling them that they don't know the Torah. They're not using the Torah, while at the same time, they accuse the people of not knowing the Torah. So in their pride, they are saying that the people are too dumb and they don't know the Torah and they are cursed when they are the ones who should be purifying them, I repeat. Yet Nicodemus says, just a moment, but you are the ones who are not keeping the Torah because you don't want to judge righteously. Does our Torah judge the man unless it hears first from him and knows what he is doing? They answered and said to him, are you also from Galilee? Are you also from, this is huge. Listen to this, and then we will see something else. They answered and said to him, because remember that they hated Galilee and its people. They would see Galilee as people with less class than everybody and less brains. Does our Torah judge the man unless it hears first from him and knows what he is doing? They answered and said to him, are you also from Galilee? Search and see that no prophet has arisen out of Galilee. And each one went to his own house. So they should have searched and give him an answer. They claimed to know the Torah and cursed the people. And they said, are you also from Galilee? Search and see that no prophet. So they are claiming, according to their full knowledge, which they thought they had, that no prophet had come from Galilee. So if no prophet had come from Galilee, how could the Messiah come from Galilee? Which is something that doesn't make sense. Yahweh can do whatever he wants. And if he said that he will be from Galilee, as he said in Micah, then why are they saying otherwise? Contradicting the prophets, as they did in the time of the prophets. Like Yahushua would say, you kill the prophets when you bring things to their graves and clean their graves. You are showing that you are children of those who killed the prophets. So, and who put them in those graves in the first place. That's the point. So they were rejecting the prophecy. They are saying that Messiah cannot be from Galilee because no prophet has come from Galilee. I repeat, that doesn't make sense because he was prophesied that he will be from Galilee. And because even if no prophet had come from Galilee, doesn't mean that the Messiah cannot come from Galilee. However, it is amazing the lack of knowledge that they had, even though it is said that they knew Torah by heart. Maybe not all of them, but many of them or some of them, of those leaders, right? In my book, Declaring the End from the Beginning, which is not yet in English, but uh, hopefully will next year. I speak about this. All right, so they said, go and search and see that no prophet has come from Galilee. If we search the Torah, we will find that Eliyahu, the prophet that represents the prophets, he was from Galilee. Yonah, Yahushua said that the sign of Yonah would be given to recognize the first and the last, but after their manifestation, so too late for those who don't believe. Yonah was from Galilee. Micah, known as Micah, who prophesied that the Messiah would come from Galilee in chapter 5, he himself was from Galilee. You can read that in Micah 1:1. When it comes to Eliyahu and Yonah, you can read in 2 Kings 14:25 and Joshua 19:13. Through both of them, you realize that Yonah was originally from Galilee. Eliyahu was from Galilee, 1 Kings 17:1. So Eliyahu, Yonah, Micah, and then Nahum and Hosea. And to close, Elishua, known as Elisha. So 6 very, very important prophets all came from Galilee. So like I said, Nahum, Hosea, Elishua, they were all from Galilee, as well as Micah, Yonah, and Eliyahu. So 6 very important prophets came from Galilee. Yet the Pharisees said, "Are you also from Galilee? Search and see that no prophet has arisen out of Galilee." So they had no understanding and knowledge truly of the Torah as they would claim and think, while they were accusing the people of being accursed and not knowing the Torah. Now, isn't it interesting that Galilee, since it is circuit or circle, is connected to reincarnation? Reincarnation in Hebrew is called Gilgul. Gilgul, which has as a root the same root as Galil. So nowadays, in Christianity mainly, because of the Catholic doctrine, from the very beginning, they took reincarnation out of, even though it is part of the scriptures, it is part of the true doctrine, they took it out during the apostasy. So when one speaks of reincarnation nowadays, there's a lot of issues with people, most of the time. Just like here, they answered and said to him, "Are you also from Galilee? Search and see that no prophet has arisen out of Galilee." So in a way, we could say here, as people say, go and search and study, and you will see that there is no reincarnation. There is no Gilgul. There is no Galil. Prophets won't return. And just in case, remember that some believe that Yahushua was Eliyahu. Some believe that John the Baptist was Eliyahu, and Yahushua said that he was Eliyahu. And when Yahushua would ask who the people would say he was, they would say Yirmiyahu or one of the prophets. So they did believe that the prophets would reincarnate, have a Gilgul, as represented also by Galil. So that is the last verse